Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Aurora Committee of Adjustment meeting. I will start by introducing the staff and committee members. I am the Secretary-Treasurer for this meeting, Antonio Greco, and to the left of me is the planner, Matthew Peverini. The committee members from the left to right are as follows. Vice Chair, Clarence Louie. Chair, Tom Plamondon. Steve DeAngeli, Michelle Boyer, and committee member Daniel Lajeunesse is not with us tonight, but he is also part of the committee. We do have a new committee of adjustment members, and a motion will need to be passed in appointing a new committee chair and vice chair for the 2018 to 2022 term. I will now look to the committee for a motion to appoint the chair of the committee of adjustment.
I would like to move that Tom Plamondon be the chair of the Town of Aurora Committee of Adjustment.
All in favor? That carries. I will now look to the committee for a motion to appoint the vice chair of the Committee of Adjustment.
Be the vice chair of the Town of Aurora Committee of Adjustment.
Is there a seconder? All in favor? And that carries. With that being said, I want it to be heard on the record that the committee member Daniel Lajeunesse confidentially submitted his vote for Tom Plamondon for chair and Clarence Louie for vice chair. I will now look to the committee chair for the remainder of the meeting.
Thank you very much, and again, welcome to the Town of Aurora Committee of Adjustment meeting for this evening, and thank you. We started a little bit late, but obviously we have a new committee, and we want to make sure that we do everything correctly from the get-go, so welcome. As we've all been introduced already, we can dispense with that. I'll briefly outline the process that we will be following for the meeting this evening. So the following process will occur. I will briefly outline the purpose of the application or applications, and then the applicant or agent will be given the opportunity to make a presentation. However, one is not required. It is the applicant's decision whether they wish to speak or let the application proceed on the merits of the information as received. Following any initial comments from the applicant, I will invite members of the public who have an interest in the application to come forward and address the committee. Those members of the public who wish to speak must clearly state their name and address and sign the corresponding request for notice form on the table in front of us, and I believe it's over here to my left. After completing the form, please hand it to the Secretary-Treasurer. Each individual may speak only once on an issue, and once discussion has commenced in respect of a motion, no further presentations shall be made. If you wish any assistance with regarding to visual material or technical assistance, please let me know before making any presentation. This public meeting is being audio and video recorded. Your name, address, comments, and any other personal information are being recorded according to the Municipal Act and Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. This will help our town clerk prepare accurate minutes and to create a record that is available to the general public, including on the town's website. Questions about this collection should be directed to the town clerk. Please be advised that the reports being considered tonight are also available on the desk again to my left in front of you. Should you wish to receive notification of any of the decisions for tonight's meeting, please complete the appropriate form. Owners and agents will automatically be notified. Please ensure that all questions and/or comments are directed through me as the chair. And if relevant, I will ask the appropriate person respond. It should be noted that the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond to any questions or comments should the committee feel that it is appropriate. So, I will look to the committee for approval of the agenda. I will need a motion and a seconder.
I move to approve the agenda for this evening.
Thank you. Seconder? Thank you, Clarence. All in favor? And that carries. And again, I'll look to members of the committee to declare any pecuniary interest or general nature thereof on any of the applications for this evening. And seeing none, thank you. We have the adoption of the minutes for the last Committee of Adjustment of January the 10th, 2019. That's meeting number 1901. And I will just make a comment that I am the only member who was at that meeting who is returning to the committee. And so I will state that the minutes that have been circulated have been reviewed by myself and are acceptable. So I will look to the committee for a motion to approve those minutes.
I move for the approval of the minutes from the meeting held January 10, 2019, meeting number 1901.
Thank you, Clarence. Seconder? Stephen? Thank you very much. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. So we have applications for this evening. The first one is a minor variance application MV 2019-01, and that's for 302 Wellington Street East, unit number 3. And this is, the purpose of the application is to permit a fitness center as a permitted use, thereby requiring a variance. Departments and agencies that have been circulated: Planning Division, applicant reviewed, no comments. Building Division, preliminary zoning review complete. Engineering Division, Operational Services, Central York Fire. Electra, all application reviewed, no comments received. York Region, application reviewed, no comments. Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority, application reviewed, and it is subject to conditions. So I'll ask the applicant to come forward. Good evening. Welcome. I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
And your name, and do you wish to make a presentation?
My name's Daryl Duraco, property management for Perwick Investments. No presentation.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Have a seat. And with that, I'll ask if there is anyone here from the public who wishes to speak on this application. Seeing none, I'll look to members of the committee if there are any comments or questions. I will just ask and just make sure the conditions, there are simply Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority requiring the owner to make a payment of $500 as per their standard condition. You're familiar with that? You don't have a problem with that condition? All right. Any questions from members of the committee? Wow. That was easy. Terrific. I also don't have any comments or questions on this one, so I'll look to the committee for a motion. Clarence?
Yes, I move for the approval of the minor variance application MV 2019-01, the applicant being Perwick Investment Limited, with respect to a property with the address 302 Wellington Street East, unit number 3, subject to the condition that was recommended by the staff, being 1A, the payment of $500, and B, the obtaining a permit from the Conservation Authority for the works within the regulated area.
Look for a seconder. Seconded by Stephen. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. So we'll move forward. The next application before the committee this evening is minor variance application for 77 Wellington Street East. and this is file number MV 2019-04. The purpose of the application is to permit a minimum of 10 parking spaces, thereby requiring a variance of 3 parking spaces. I'll just, as a matter of correction, in the staff report it said maximum. It should have read minimum. Departments and agencies circulated. Planning Division, application received, no comments. Building Division, preliminary zoning review. Engineering Division, application reviewed, no comments. Operational Service, no comments, subject to conditions. Central York Fire Services, application reviewed, no comments. Electric Utilities, application reviewed, no comments. And York Region, application reviewed, no comments. I am reminded that this is actually a new application, having come before the committee before. So I'll ask, is the owner or agent here this evening? Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that introduction. Having said that, I will not really need to make a presentation. However, I would like to make a statement, which will be a lot shorter than a presentation.
Thank you.
This application has some history, which is why, and there are new committee members, which is why I feel it's necessary to speak to it. So I'd like to say that my name is Mary Filippetto, and I'm a land use planner with Armstrong Planning and Project Management. And I have been retained by the applicants with respect to the second item on today's agenda. So we are here today to hear an application for a minor variance pursuant to Section 45(1) of the Planning Act. The applicants are seeking one variance, and it's to zoning bylaw 6000-17 of the town of Aurora for a relief of 3 parking spaces on the lands known as 77 Wellington Street East. The applicant will be using the property for a daycare, which is a permitted use under the bylaw 6000-17. I will give you a little history of how we arrived here for the benefit of the new members. I understand, Mr. Chair, that you were here in the prior applications.
Yes, yes.
So today this would be the 3rd committee hearing, although it's under a different application number, as you mentioned, for a minor variance, one variance on the property. The first hearing was held on October 11, 2018, for a variance of 5 parking spaces. So there was a reduction requested of 5. So the bylaw permits 13, and the request was for 5. At this hearing, the application was deferred due to some of the issues that were raised at the committee hearing with respect to functioning of the property in terms of access and functional access. All the staff comments that were received for that particular hearing were all in favor of the application, and those including the Planning and Development Services Department. So just to note that the Planning and Development Services Department did opinion that the application is minor and meets all 4 tests of the Planning Act. The second hearing, because it was deferred, so the second hearing took place on December 6, 2018. In preparation for that hearing, my clients have retained a traffic consultant in order to address the issues that were raised at the first hearing. So a parking study, access study, etc., was prepared. A number of site improvements have been incorporated into the site plan, which the recommendations of our consultant indicate that the overall site conditions are improved from the current conditions of the property. And in addition, staff from the traffic analyst department of the town are in concurrence with the recommendations of our traffic consultant. And also, staff comments had no issues and agreeing that the variance continued to be minor. The committee at that particular hearing refused the application, and the applicant has decided to not appeal that decision to the LPAT. So since then, which brings us to January, the applicants, which are my clients, have decided to retain me. And in addition, they have also retained a traffic consultant. So the changes from the December application were such that they further reduced the relief requested from 5 parking spaces to 3. And in addition, they've also incorporated an accessible parking space. And they've also included all of the recommendations and from the issues that were raised at the hearing within their report. And given that the Planning and Development Services Department did recommend approval of the application on the basis of 5 spaces, they still continue to maintain their position that the application for the variance before you, which is a reduction in 3 spaces, they continue to maintain that the variance meets the 4 tests under the Planning Act. It is our submission today that my client has demonstrated in good faith that they are working with the town and have continued to work with the town, and that the recommendation set out in the Committee of Adjustment staff report dated February 12 are in concurrence with what our professional opinion is. And so what we're saying is that we agree with the recommendations of the Committee of Adjustment report outlined with respect to Arbor's reports and anything of that nature. We don't have objection to meeting any of those conditions. And we also, and those conditions are found on pages 2 and 3 of the February 12 report. Further, the Planning and Development Services Department have evaluated the application once again, and in accordance with those 4 tests, they continue to be of the opinion that the application meets those tests and have no objection to the approval of the application that is before you today, which is a reduction in 3 parking spaces. It is my professional opinion as a registered professional planner that, and my submission to you today, that the committee concur with the town's recommendations, and we agree with those recommendations. You have done a great job, and so has staff, in terms of explaining the application, which is why I didn't want to go through a formal presentation on the application, even just to save time. However, I am pleased to answer any questions of the committee this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for taking the time to provide that background information. I couldn't agree more. Thank you. So I'll just ask you to just stand aside for a moment. I'm sure we are going to have some questions for you. But first, what I need to do is ask if there is anyone here from the public who wishes to address the committee. And seeing none, and before I just turn this over to other members of the committee, I will note and want to make sure that you've seen this. We did receive a letter on this application from Mr. Thomas, I believe it's Seidel, from 62 Mahogany Court in Aurora, being the owner of the neighboring property at 81 Wellington. I'll just ask the applicant, have you seen that letter? Okay, thank you. All right, I'll turn it over to members of the committee who may or may not have any comments or questions. Perhaps I'll start over here with you, Clarence.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but you might as well, because you're probably going to be looking to you for answers, so thank you.
Good evening. Have you a chance to look at the internal memorandum that's attached to the staff report?
Which, the February 12th one?
It is.
Yes.
And so through the chair, I would like to ask you this question. At page 3 of the internal memorandum, you see under heading number 5.
Yes.
What is the applicant's position on whether the committee should consider granting the application but impose a time constraint, for example, 1 year?
Yes, I think that's a great question, and thank you for asking it. So I have done ample research on this matter, and my opinion is that based on the municipalities that have been quoted within the staff report, I've looked into the certain examples, and if the committee doesn't mind, I'd like to explain what those examples were so that you have an idea of what we're comparing it to with this application.
Sure, go ahead.
So, for example, in the town of Newmarket, the committee granted under Section 45(9) a temporary use for the construction and the addition of a building, which would have taken up additional parking space for a larger retail area. So what the committee has decided to do was to assist the applicant in terms of build your extension, and when you're completed the extension, provide the parking space, because they would have had to have trucks or whatever to occupy those spaces. So that was the issue with Newmarket. I have spoken with the planners, in case you're wondering, so it's not just something that I'm coming up with. I did speak with the planners of the municipalities. With respect to the town of Stouffville, that matter was with respect to the addition of a patio use. And from my understanding and my research on this particular section, under Section 45 of the Planning Act, it's often used for seasonal uses as well. And in this particular case, it was for a patio use for an existing restaurant. And so the restaurant would be adding a patio use, and the committee has requested to see how that works out in terms of compatibility with the adjacent neighborhood. I also want to know, there's another example with respect to trucking and storage within an office area, and it was for a short period of time, and the committee granted that because the parking spaces would have been reduced. So after a certain time, the trucking and storage facility was gone. It was needed for the main operation. Once that was gone, then everything was in place. So the committee, in essence, has helped out under this provision, the applicants, from what I've researched. In terms of the use of the section, my understanding, and it's based on my research, is that I don't know that the town of Aurora has actually implemented this section in the past. So this would be a precedent case. If I'm wrong, I'd like to hear from the committee, but that's my understanding based on my research. Also, I wanted to note that the section is more commonly used in the City of Toronto as opposed to areas within York Region, and it's sometimes seldomly used in York Region. So, for example, in Markham, when I spoke with a planner, they did tell me the last time they used it was well over 2.5 years ago. So, with respect to the City of Toronto, the planner, and actually I did speak with a Committee of Adjustment member as well, who is also a planner, She did advise me that in Toronto, they use them, for example, if there's a flower shop who wants to expand during the summer their use of their flowers on a parking lot that's adjacent to the property. So the applicant actually asked the committee to use that section. So that, in that case, that was used. That's one example. Another example has to do with the seasonal uses with patios, and that's a quite common one that's more frequently used. And it's understandable because you're talking about the city of Toronto where there's the entertainment district and lots going on. The third example that was brought to my attention that's very commonly used in the city of Toronto has to do with the fact that they have two bylaws. So they have their comprehensive bylaw, and then they have their individual codes ranging from Scarborough all the way to Etobicoke. So having dealt with the city of Toronto on any applications, we've always have to ensure there's always two bylaws for every application to ensure that the bylaws meet each other. So in the instance, for example, if an applicant is proposing a use and it's permitted under one of the bylaws, but it's not permitted under one of the other bylaws, the committee will grant this permission, this temporary permission, to allow the applicant to continue or start their use to obtain a zoning bylaw so that they meet both bylaws. So that is the research that I have been able to come up with and confirm with colleagues and professionals in the industry. And in my professional opinion, I feel that those examples are logical examples of the use of that section of the bylaw, of the Planning Act.
Yeah.
With respect to 77 Wellington Street, and as you know, the condition was removed by planning staff. It was originally included in the recommendations, and then they did remove that condition, which we were very pleased with. Having said that, I think it's also important to have the discussion as well. And with respect to 77 Wellington Street, I feel that it's a very different scenario that we're talking about here. And the reason is because we are here today to speak about one variance, and that one variance is for 3 parking spaces. The town of Aurora, including the Planning and Services Development Department and including the traffic analyst of the town, and I've spoken to everybody, they concur that they do not have any issues with the amount of parking spaces. So we are here today to request the committee to approve the variance before you for a reduction of 3 parking spaces. If we were to impose, or if the committee rather, if the committee were to impose the condition under section 45(9), what this does for our applicants is that they have not started their business. So the business is not operating. They're in the process of having to deal with provincial legislation under the Early Childhood Education Act in order to obtain their licensing. Otherwise, the daycare cannot proceed. And so, just to give you an indication, this is the licensing requirements under that act that come out of that regulation. They are very onerous. And one of the conditions of this act is to ensure that zoning is in place. Now, having a temporary zoning that's not guaranteeing zoning in perpetuity could jeopardize having our clients receive the licensing requirements under the Ministry of Education. So I feel, and it's my strong submission as a professional planner, that the condition that's been recommended by planning staff is not applicable to the other examples that I have researched and come across. So my submission to you, Mr. Chair, and to the committee members today is to approve the minor variance before you with the conditions that are outlined on the February 12th report under the Committee of Adjustment staff report. We don't have any objections to those conditions. And given that the town and our consultant team are in agreement with the recommendations of the reports that the overall site improvement is going to increase from what the existing conditions are, we strongly feel that the committee consider to approve this.
Thank you. I appreciate the research that you've done. Just before, Clarence, I want to go to staff just for a second. In the report, the staff report, while we're on that subject and before we leave it, or we may come back to it, I'll just ask staff, Antonio mentioned the City of Toronto in the report, town of Whitchurch, Stouffville, and the City of Markham. Were there any other examples that you went through that would either support our looking at that as an option? The examples that the planner just gave us on behalf of the applicant were more related to temporary uses or seasonal uses. And just wondering if in your research there was anything different that would shed a little bit of light on this. And I guess in the second part of that, we did have a little bit of a discussion, but if we were to impose a condition and limit the approval to let's say a year or a fixed period of time, the application then would have a finite period. Perhaps just outline how that would come back to the committee once that period is over. So two parts to that. Other cases that you might have come across in your research, and two on the process side coming back.
Through the chair, there is one other case that I did do some research on. It's an example out of the town of Caledon. Okay. And this was acquired from Canley, which is a legal services with board cases. There are some planning ones. In this application at the town of Caledon, applicants made an application to the Committee of Adjustment in connection with their residence on an estate lot in the community. And what they were looking to do is essentially they had a pool and they wanted to expand the home occupation outside of the residence and to allow for a more general service. So through that, the Committee of Adjustment approved the application for 2 years for the months of February, March, and April, period of 4.5 hours. June, July, and August for a period of 5.5 hours to the following variances, and these are just what they were. To increase the area of a home occupation for a swim school from 25% to 46% for a period of 2 years. To permit the operation of a home occupation to be someone other than the occupant of the home for a period of 2 years, and to permit 2 employees other than the occupant of the home or the operator of the home occupation to be engaged in the home occupation, where no more than 1 employee or instructor and 2 students are engaged in a lesson at any time. These variances allowed for a tryout period in accordance with evidence which would enable the town to assess the merits of the home occupation swim school use for a period of 2 years. So presumably, these variances would be allowed to lapse if the use failed to comply with the approved variances. So that's one example out of the town of Caledon that I think might closely relate to this application.
Okay. And again, on the process side, you touch on it in the report that the application then would have to come back seeking the same reduction in parking and would have to be made prior to the expiration date of the approval that we would give.
Through the chair, yes, because subject to any approval and subject to any timeline, because it would be a decision, you would have to come back, or the applicant would have to come back to committee with a subsequent application.
And just for clarity, we could look at a period of time at our discretion. So whether it was a year or two or 3, or is there a time limit on that?
Through the chair, the Planning Act states any authority or permission granted by the committee under subsections 1, 2, and 3 of section 45 may be for such time and subject to such terms and conditions as the committee considers advisable and as are set out in the decision. So you have some flexibility. Sorry.
All right. Thank you. I'll again defer back to
Purposes
for clarity. Sure.
on the example that
Matthew.
Mr. I forget your last name. I'm sorry. Peverino. Yeah.
Close.
Oh, yeah, I got it
Close
right.
enough.
Peverini.
Yes. So you started off by saying it's an estate lot, and that you talked about a pool. Was it an expansion of a pool?
So through the chair, the pool is existing. It was an expansion to the home occupation. The home occupation the zoning bylaw limits the home occupation to 26% or 25%, and this was expanded to 46%.
So sorry, 25% of what?
The maximum area, through the chair, the maximum area of a home occupation use is limited to 25% of a dwelling unit's floor area, whereas 46% is the ceiling proposed by the application.
Okay.
So that's just basically they were using the house up to a maximum of 25%, but by extension, using the pool in the backyard area, I assume that's what's driving that percentage to go from 25 to 47. Pretty straightforward.
And so Mr. Chair, may I say something to that effect? I just wanted to provide a comment.
If it's relevant to your application, by all means.
Most certainly.
Yeah.
We're here to talk about a reduction of 3 parking spaces,
Okay.
not a use.
Yeah.
The use is clearly permitted in the bylaw, and we are complying with that. So it's the town has not indicated, and even in just recent discussions as of 2 days ago with planning staff, they have agreed that they don't have an issue with that.
No, and we've got the staff report, so
yeah,
we're very aware of that. No, I was just curious if there was anything within the staff's research that might have
yes,
added.
That's a fair question.
Yeah,
yes.
Might have added some more clarity on when that particular provision is used and how.
Sure.
I don't think members of the committee are familiar with that, that process or that option. So just wanting to get a full sense of what that really means. So I'll go ahead, Clarence.
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair, I just want to, on the same topic, get a better understanding for those who might not appreciate. What's the time process here when we're talking about getting the approval from the ministry? Let's say there's an approval for the application today. What would be the step that leads to the eventual opening of the facility?
I don't have a precise date because, as I said, one of the conditions in the manual is the zoning in perpetuity, along with a number of other conditions. And so I can tell you that the applicants are working with the ministry, but their license is contingent on the zoning, and they have some very strict regulations with respect to drop off and pickup that is been placed within the policy for the specific property. Unfortunately, I'm not at a position to share that information because it's private between the applicant and their advisor. But I can tell you it's very strict in terms of who is on the property at which times, watching incoming and outgoing vehicles, children coming in, pickup of parents, what time. And I've experienced this with my own children, so I can guarantee you that this is something that's happening. I have the policy with me. It's in writing. Unfortunately, I can't share it with you at the moment, but it's quite strict. It's not something that's just, anyway.
And thank you for that explanation. And again, through the chair, the reason why I'm asking these series of questions is to get a better understanding as to, let's say we're considering a time restriction on as a condition for the approving the application. What we want to get from the applicant is, well, if we're going down that path, what would be a reasonable amount of time as a condition? And I appreciate your position that there shouldn't be any time constraints attached as a condition to the approval of the application. But if we're going down that path, let's say, could you help us in giving the committee an appreciation as to what would be appropriate in the circumstances? Because let's say we approve it based on a 1-year term, and within a year period of time, while we're not, the applicant, the landowner is not far down the path of opening the facility, then that's not really the process we want to undertake. Could you help us with that?
Yeah, so essentially, this condition puts a very difficult situation on our client, and it's more of a financial and economic burden. So I'm straying a little bit away from the planning. But if this condition were imposed, and I'm looking at, I guess, the worst case scenario, just to give you an idea. If this condition were imposed, my clients have not begun the business use. They have to start it up. So it's permitted, but they haven't started it up. So I guess through this 45-9, what I'm hearing is that the clients be requested to start up their business use, to undertake further studies, which they've already been approved by the municipality in concert with our, the recommendations in our consultant's report. And then before that 1-year timeline is up, or it could be less than that from what my understanding is, they're required to come back a 4th time to this committee. This is the 3rd time we're here. And in good faith, we're here because we want to work with you. We don't want to appeal this. That's not our intention. That's not my client's intention. But to place that condition on my clients without a certainty that there is zoning in place is very difficult. Some of the other examples, those businesses are already operating. So if they do not have a patio at the end of the day, they have a business to operate. In this particular situation, if there was already an operating daycare use and the committee came forward with a condition, I feel it is a more logical request and more reasonable. But because the use has not even commenced and they are in the process of meeting the regulation requirements, which you've seen are quite onerous, I feel it's onerous on our client to have to go through that process. and it's not as comparable to the other examples that were provided.
And thank you again for your comments. And so do I take it from your response that you cannot enlighten us as to what, if we are looking into imposing a time constraint pursuant to 45 sub 9, an appropriate amount of time that would allow your client to start up the facility and also the process to consider the application at a later time once the time condition expires? Are you not able to enlighten us on that?
So my concern is that what guarantees are going to be put in place to ensure an approval
And
without a business use having even been started.
right,
It's very difficult if you put yourself in my client's shoes. They have a use is permitted. They're only asking for a three parking reduction that the town agrees with. So to impose this condition without a business use not even having been started, and they cannot get their license until the zoning is in perpetuity. It almost jeopardizes them getting their license in a sense.
I think what the committee members is trying to get a handle on is we could sit here, and if there was a time restriction placed on the approval, and you were to say, well, it would take us 6 months, for example, to get all of our approvals in place and get up and running. And we would need, at that period of time plus, let's say, a full calendar year in order to evaluate, what we're doing and how it's working, and, how we can demonstrate that that the reduction is warranted. Is it, is that lead time? I would assume that there might be some improvements that would have to be made to the property in order to make it usable for your use. Is that 6 months, or I guess that's what we're looking for. Is it a year and then a year to operate?
No, Mr. Chair, I understand exactly where you're coming from.
Okay.
But from our perspective, this doesn't guarantee us an approval. It
would guarantee you an approval for that period of time.
For a temporary approval for the 1 year. But then what happens after 1 year? They have a daycare use that's functioning, and we already have the appropriate studies that have been done to demonstrate that the use is going to function properly, and it's actually going to be improving the existing site conditions. So I don't see the need for it because we've already done the work, and the town agrees with us. It's not like we're in a situation where I've got comments that are objecting to what we're, and in essence, the application was deferred to address those comments. So I'm not getting guarantees from my client. It's very difficult, and it's a very different scenario. Right. It's very unique, and I've looked into other situations. I wanted to mention this earlier, where there was either a daycare or a similar use, and I know that Matthew provided a situation, but I can't compare the two. I think they're very different.
Yeah, and I don't, I wouldn't take, your comments or his comments out of context relative to this application. So I would agree. Yeah. Go ahead, Clarence.
And I know Matthew had earlier mentioned about this OMB decision, which I understand would be the Peterson-Caledon decision, 2016, Canley 42943. In that case, it was a 2-year, as you may recall, time restriction imposed on the approval of the application. So I just want to repeat the question and hope to get some understanding from you. What if the time condition is 2 years? Would that not provide a guarantee for the applicant to start up the business and to then demonstrate upon coming back before the committee, whether the minor variance that was sought continues to meet, in the views of the committee members, the four-part test under the Planning Act.
Mr. Chair, through you, I feel that we've already addressed that. The four tests of the Planning Act is very clear, and it's my professional opinion. I don't have any objections to that, and I feel very strongly about that. Again, in that scenario, even if you extended the temporary bylaw, I'm not getting zoning in place. We're required to do further studies, of which have already been done. So I'm not sure what difference is going to happen. You know, we're here to focus on the one variance, and that's the reduction of 3 parking spaces. That's it. Nothing else.
Okay, thank you. You okay? Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for all your comments.
Oh, you're
I
very
have a
welcome.
few questions myself. In reading the proxy study, I note that the proxy site had, having a very similar capacity, had 8 staff spots that were utilized consistently between 9 a.m. and 4:30, and I see that in the applicant and in the traffic study, they were saying that 4 or 5 in the earlier study, and in the new study, 5 spots would be sufficient. And this was based on the higher transit score for the applicant site. You know, recognizing that these are experts and they're expert models, I believe it's fair to say that that is still a modeling assumption, correct? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's a modeling assumption prepared by a professional transportation modeler that was reviewed by the town's traffic analyst, and they have come to the same conclusion where they agree to it. In addition, as you all are aware, the property is located in the promenade, which requires, which actually allows a lot of flexibility in terms of parking to create the vitality and the mix of uses that the plan suggests in the official plan. And in addition, just based on the standard parking requirements in the town zoning bylaw, we exceed them by double or more.
Thank you. And yes, through you, Mr. Chair, I think what I'm getting at here is what, you know, simply because it is an assumption, recognizing that it's done by professionals, assumptions do have, you know, reality sometimes deviates from assumptions and models. So I guess the question I have is, what assurances or what controls would there be on site to ensure that there is, let's look at it a different way, that there would be sufficient parking made available, meaning at least 5 sites for pickup and drop off?
So from my understanding in the report is that, so we are providing 10 parking spots. Originally it was 8, and even at the 8 spots, the traffic analyst of the town supported that. So we are providing 10 spots. We've added an accessible parking space, which we did not have in the previous plan. And we have whatever the conditions were outlined in the staff reports, we've met all of them, and we're committing to them. I mean, we're not going to stray from them. I have, like I said, I do have the policy of the daycare that has been drafted up with the Ministry of Transportation advisor and my client with respect to parking, and it's quite strict, and they do require, it's in writing. If I can get the permission as the agent before representing the applicants to provide that information, I'm more than happy to do that, but unfortunately, there's a privacy requirement at this point. It was even difficult for me to get the information. I had to get several letters of authorization, but I do have them with me, and they're very stringent. They even ask the parents to call in advance so they know when cars are coming, which cars are coming, to regulate the use of that. And there's fencing as well around the property. And you know, I've cleared that with, I think his first name is Andrew, but I will call him Mr. Ray of the town. We've had a lengthy discussion, and he supports the type of fencing for safety purposes. But again, we're straying from why we're here, and we're here for a reduction of 3 car spaces.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, I respectfully, I don't think that we're straying, because right now what we're talking about is the sufficiency of parking spots for the use, right? And so what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at the proxy report and trying to adequate it to the applicant's site. And you used a word that I think was very apt in terms of it's a unique situation in certain cases. When you look at the entry path, and I appreciate that there was in the new site plan that there was a widening of the driveway at certain points. And what I'm looking at here, just to make clear my thought process, because you do have the assumption that the permanent staffing spots, because in the document, in the submission, it does state that the applicant will be looking at 7 permanent staff and potentially 3 part-time staff. So
they have committed to have the staff available to monitor. I have that in writing from the ministry's draft communications with the applicant and the licensee.
Correct, and I do appreciate that, and through you, Mr. Chair, the point I was making is that when I look at the proxy site, there is a consistent use throughout the day of 8 spots for staff, right? And I look at the assumption that there will be that 5 spots will be adequate for staff at the new site, even though the capacity is similar and the staffing is similar. So. And I understand that's based on the transit, and the assumption here is that staff will take transit, right? If I am understanding the assumption correctly, would that be a fair assumption?
I believe it's 4 spots. If you could just give me one moment.
Yeah, I believe it changed.
4 spots for the staffing. Yeah, so it would be 4 spots. Right. So we would have 6 spots. Okay. Available. So I guess
that would imply that either 3 staff or up to 6 staff will be required to take transit or find off-site parking. So I'm trying to get that understanding of how that would occur and what the plan is to ensure that there would be 6 spots available for pickup and drop-off.
So just to explain. The maximum occupancy that's proposed is up to 50, but that also includes staff. So it would be about 43 students, and it's based on the GFA requirements that are stipulated under the legislation of the Ontario Early Years Act. And so that's how we came up with that number. So this would not require any adjustments to the existing home. So that's what we're working with. We're working with the site. We are doing our very best to meet the municipal standards. And at the same time, we are obligated to meet provincial standards. So we're caught in a situation where we're trying to meet both. And we're obligated to meet the provincial standards, which typically supersede the municipal ones. from my
Understood.
experience.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, I think that's exactly my point. You have requirements for staffing and for child teacher ratios,
Yes.
which requires a certain amount of staff.
Yes.
And we need to ensure that the staff have sufficient parking,
Yes.
and we need to ensure that there's sufficient parking for pickup and drop off.
Yes.
Obviously maintaining the safety and the traffic flows. So recognizing that the opinion of the traffic study is that it would be sufficient, there are certain assumptions in there, and I'm trying, and it's very, the questions I'm trying to understand is how do we make sure, right, that if we're saying that the traffic study is looking for a maximum of 4 or incorporating 4 staff, how do we balance a permanent staff of 7 and potentially 10 staff to 4 spaces, right? So how is that reconciled? How do we, what controls and what assurances do we have as a committee that the real life application will not exceed 4 staff parking spots?
So,
and
yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, and I understand exactly what you're saying, because I had the same questions as I was doing my research for the file.
Yeah.
Those are stringent requirements of the ministry. So they need to ensure that there are enough parking spots for the drop-off and pickup. And they are at different times of the day. So it's not that these vehicles would be sitting there for hours on end. It's a very quick, you drop off and pick up. I think we've all done that. I've done that. You need to get to work. And it's not, that's the basis of the assumption, which is typical and common of other daycare centers.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I think that's where I get to, having done the site visit and looking at the, if you will, the choke point as it goes through with one car going through. Once again, there are certain assumptions, and I respect the specialized nature of the assessment. But there were 2 periods where you had 6 and 7 drop-offs in 15-minute intervals, right? And the assumption being 12 minutes per interval. Once again, looking at the numbers, and with 10 parking spots, it's critical that 6 spots are maintained for pickup and drop-off, and that's my question, where I'm trying to reconcile 7 to potentially 10 staff, 4 spots, not a lot.
7 staff, sorry to interrupt.
7 permanent and potentially
and
3.
4 spots for staff.
Right, and potentially 3 part-time staff is in the study, so it could be up to 10 staff, right? So this is where I'm trying to assess the adequacy, if there is any deviation, taking into account that there are some assumptions made in the model, any model, right? And so this is where, I fully recognize that there are policies that have been drafted, but they haven't been submitted and provided, so I can only go by what's in front of me. This is where the question is: how do we ensure that how is the applicant going to ensure that 6 spots for pickup and drop off are maintained, right?
So that assurance comes from the issuance of the license. The license will not be issued unless the Ministry of Education feels comfortable, because their goal is to ensure the safety of that daycare use and the functioning of it with the children. So our clients are put in a situation where they can talk about preliminary matters. They have drafted a preliminary policy with respect to traffic and the particular items that you're talking about. But without the zoning in place, they're not in a position to give you what I mean is the ministry's not in a position to give a license. And this is a very crucial and key point to this evening's discussion, where again, I apologize, I am repeating myself, but we're here to talk about the reduction of 3 spaces, which the town is in agreement with, based on the submissions of the studies and based on the submissions of planning staff report and the transportation consultant. And I apologize for repeating myself, but I need to stress that's why we're here. We're asking the committee if 3 parking spots is desirable, a minimum of 3 parking spots. This has nothing to do with the use. It's permitted. That is it. It's very straightforward and simple.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I must stress the point that this is exactly what I'm talking about, what I'm trying to assess, whether 10 spots is sufficient for the use. I recognize the use is permitted, but the use is permitted with 13 spots.
That's right.
Per the zoning.
Yes.
I am trying to assess, based on my site visit and the data in front of me, whether the use would still be permitted with 10 spots. And that is what we are here to discuss today. I'll just move on to my next question. So, with respect to snow removal, because
what's that? Oh, okay. I'm not sure what that means. If my time is up.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Don't worry about that.
So sorry, my colleague has just raised a point that. There have been a number of site improvements, as you're aware, to the property, and one of them is a reserved sign posted on each drop-off and pick-up parking spot. And
yeah, I was just to stop you there. I was going to ask, just for reference, maybe can we get a copy of the latest site plan? Just put it up, because I think.
Sure. And
I think that might be helpful for some of the discussion.
Helpful, in addition, to have our traffic consultant address your concerns.
Mm-hmm.
He is here this evening.
Yeah, that would be.
You can defer to anyone, as you know, representing the applicant.
So if I can,
expertise, or if it's more appropriate to have someone else address the question or the concern being raised, by all means, don't hesitate.
Would that be okay if we
would be fine.
Our consultant who's prepared the study to come up?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Okay. Address your concern.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I and for the benefit of everybody here, because there is history here, and because a previous committee did look at this application. They weren't here, but they were obviously in prior to their being here this evening, probably perused some of the minutes of previous committee meetings, and some of the issues that you're hearing again are based on the fact that they weren't here for that. And I think
I appreciate that, and I think it's proper for you to be asking the question.
Yeah, and at the same time, I think the other thing is that because the previous application, and I'll say previous application, this is a new application. This new application is drawing on the work that was previously done by a traffic consultant, who I assume is okay to be, you're okay to be using that material. Obviously you are, you've filed it with this application. So although it's a new application, it's almost a continuance, because you are relying on information that was provided previously by the same consultants. So
that's a correct assumption.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you to, and we'll probably come back to it if you don't cover it all by the time we're done. And I appreciate that you're taking the time and the patience to walk us through this.
Important.
I do too. I couldn't agree more. So, yeah, please.
Okay, so I'm going to have our traffic consultant respond to any concerns that you may have.
Perfect. So again, Stephen, I don't know if you want to repeat briefly your concern so that the traffic consultant can come forward and address
Well,
that.
I think what we're, I do want to actually go on to another question, and it's good that we have this up, and I believe actually if I could refer, I'm going to ask for another document from the appendix to be put up there, because I do have one question. I think this will explain a little better where I'm going with this. But if you were to look at, I think there was SK03, if we could put that up through you, Mr. Chair, just request for staff to put up SK03.
Or the applicant.
Okay, so
the
Mr. Chair,
applicant?
I'm going to have our traffic
Please,
consultant
yeah,
take
by all
over at
means,
this
yep.
point. Okay.
Come forward and for the record, just identify yourself and
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Piruz Davudnia, and I'm a senior transportation planner, modeler, and traffic analyst with Lee Consulting, located at 625 Cochrane Drive in Markham.
thank you.
Yeah.
So can we put, do we have that sketch?
Yeah.
What is it?
SK03.
03?
Yes.
Is that the one that is up?
The one that you're looking at, if you...
Well, we can work with this one through you, Mr. Chair. My question is, and the concern about, whether the parking is sufficient. Should a car come through the driveway, and the parking is all occupied at that point in time, is there sufficient space there in this sketch for a three-point turn? And what would be the situation? Because what we are trying to assess here is, it's respectfully, I recognize that we are saying that according to the model, according to the proxy study, that we should be fine. But if in reality, right, there are some differences, we deviate from the 12-minute, drop-off time, because it is a bit of a unique site. There is a bit of a choke point there. What would happen should a car come through to the back and all parking spots are occupied? Just in my notes, referring to my notes, I guess the distance between the parking spots and the easternmost boundary is 7.2 meters, and the assumption was that the cars would be a 5.6 meter car. So what would the situation look like, if you could walk me through that, please?
Sure. Through Mr. Chair. I'm going to respond to the first question. What would be guaranteed that there will be enough spaces available for pickup and drop-off? This sketch that you're observing is the previous work based on the previous application with removal of 5 parking spaces. So in that case, we proposed 4 parking spaces to be reserved for minimum 4 parking spaces to be reserved for pickup and drop-off, and signages are to be placed for those, and with including the maximum allowed parking time. That's for the first question, and the other question that you mentioned for turnaround vehicle.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, you mentioned 4 spots designated for pickup and drop-off. Are we not saying for staff or for pickup and drop-off?
4 is reserved for pickup and drop-off. The other remaining would be obviously for staff or pickup drop-off.
So now we're at 6 for staff.
Yeah, so now that's in this application, when we have 10 parking spaces, 6 could be allocated to pickup drop-off and 4 for staff. And
sorry, if I may just ask a question there for clarity, and perhaps we can bring it up through you, Mr. Chair, but if I could ask staff, I believe in the report, if we could bring it up, it says that 5 parking spots would be sufficient for staff, and I believe what we're talking about now is 6 spots. So just for clarity, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
yeah,
Through the chair, with regards to the 5 spot, that speaks to what the parking requires, what a daycare requires in the zoning bylaw. Yeah. Section 5.4 of the bylaw states that 2.5 parking spaces per 100 meters squared of gross floor area are required for a daycare. So that's where the 5 value comes in.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe in the conclusion, though, Leah conclusion, it states that 5 parking spots would be sufficient. It's,
We're talking about the staff report?
no, the Leah consulting conclusion, I believe, but we can move on. I'll look for it as I'm listening.
So, for Mr. Chair, 4 parking space was based on our previous work and based on the proxy site survey that we observed. We still believe that 4 parking space would be sufficient to address those, but now that they are adding more, 2 more spaces, that 2 more spaces could either allocate it to pick up drop-off or staff. It could be a condition of your approval, but we still think the minimum should be 4.
Okay.
But we don't have any comments on maximum number because there is more. Clearly, there is more flexibility for employees. That could be, for example, parking spaces available could be as a condition of employment, their employment. And this is something that we normally provide for other applications for the office uses, other uses in different municipalities, so they can use TDM measures or transit subsidies, bicycles or other so forth to address that. So in terms of turnaround space in the drive aisle, the minimum width is currently 7.2 meters, and we haven't provided any drawing to show that, but based on the current drawing that you can be seen here, this is the largest vehicle, similar to the length of F-140, 150, that could, with one steering wheel, could get out and go to the axis. So, based on my experience, I can say, yeah, with 3-point turn, it can be done within 7.2. Even in similar cases in the city of Toronto, the minimum width is 6 meters. Even with 6 meters, that's feasible.
Okay. Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, just for clarity, so if all the parking spots are occupied, an F-150 would be able to do a 3-point turn if there came up? Yeah,
this is these vehicles that you see in those boxes is 5.6 meters. Not the extended length of the F-150, the normal ones. And some other vehicles that we meant, I have it actually, they're the minivans. Normal minivans they're shorter than this length. The width are the same, but the length are shorter. So this is the kind of conservative drawing.
Okay, thank you. Just one final question, Mr. Chair. So what would be the impact of snow removal and on the availability of parking spots, in your expert opinion?
That's an interesting question because it was brought up in the previous meeting, and I went to the site after the meeting, last meeting, and tonight, and based on my observations, they already pushed the snow to the fence from all sides, and there is sufficient space. There are some landscape area that could use as a snow storage.
Thank you. So just a follow-up question through you, Mr. Chair. So there was no reduction of driveway or parking spots due to snow removal?
Based on, for example, this current condition, no. But in very heavy situation, who knows?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michelle?
Okay, so I had the same concerns as Steve did on the parking. If we have 7 full-time and 3 potential part-time, that there wouldn't be enough spots for pickup and drop-off at the heavy points, both in the morning and the afternoon. So that was one of my concerns. And just a question through the chair. When I looked at some of the drawings, and again, I'm not sure, this is not transportation, this might be to you. is drawing B2 and drawing C2 on the application shows planned classrooms and labels like CASA, toddler, and so on. So my question to the applicant, is this being considered as a Montessori preschool? So it's a Montessori? Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, by all means.
Just have a couple of comments on that. To address your concern, through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it is going to be used as a Montessori. It's just for your information. French will be one of the languages that will be used. And in addition, the previous committee members may have been aware of this, but just to give you a little bit of background, our client has a doctorate in education, and she is a professor from her homeland, and she's also operated several daycare facilities. So when she has come here, she has her partner in education here available, and who's also operating daycares, and the two of them together are it's their dream to operate this, and they are going to make it a Montessori, but they're also going to be implementing various techniques such as like Waldorf and Learn to Play and things like that. And I feel that it's a great use of a daycare use, and as a parent, I'm happy with it. But
Okay.
I just wanted to give you that background information, is that they're very highly educated and they're very well versed in this topic. And, the architectural plans, currently they are working with the ministry to finalize them so that they are more up to par, so that when it gets to the point of building code, that they are applicable and they meet those standards. Right now, just for the application purposes, we've just showed you, to give you a general idea.
Okay, thank you. And through the chair, I mean, that leads me again just to the issues of people coming and going, and just sort of the log jams that can occur based on the number of parking spots that you're looking to have up to 10. I'm a Montessori parent up at the Aurora Montessori, and their parking lot is huge, and they have a huge driveway, and parking was brutal. I mean, there were accidents to happen. There were also kids crossing the road or the driveway to get into the school from the parking lot. So I think just some of the concerns that we have in terms of if 7 spots are being taken by staff, that leaves 3 for coming and going. And if it's operated as a Montessori, classes begin at 8:45, and you might have some early before and after school from 6:30, and you might see people coming and going there. But the assumptions that we're making, we don't know if those assumptions are going to be valid, whether the teachers are going to be taking transit, and are not going to require a parking spot, leaving these other spots open for pickup and drop-offs. And, as a Montessori parent, 12 minutes, I'm also questioning that, because a lot of times parents will want to come in and talk to the CASA teacher in terms of how their kids are doing, and there's usually an observatory window where parents can watch their children, using the Montessori or the Waldorf method of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
That is always, the Montessori way. So I'm not sure how long these parking spots will be taken by parents. So.
Okay, thank you for your concerns. I just want to confirm with my traffic consultant on one item.
It's a school. It's a school.
Through Mr. Chair, in terms of required number of parking spaces for staff, even when we used proxy site survey results and calculating the rate based on of the GFA, which is the industry standard, there will be 5 parking spaces based on the more auto-dependent area, which was the proxy site located in. So 7 plus 3, as I understand it, not all of them own vehicles, and not all of them arrive necessarily at the same time or work within the same shift, so which is captured in a proxy site survey. 4 parking spaces would be without signs, so the rest could be have signs to be reserved for parents to pick up and drop off. And we also have the average, maximum, minimum of the time of the vehicles were parked in our report. Yes, you're right. During the PM specifically, there was a vehicle that parked more than 1 hour, and but the average during the AM, if I'm not mistaken, is 12 minutes. And sorry. And what we proposed to resolve this was to put maximum park time on the signs to make parking spaces available for kind of harsh conditions. So in our parking space, sorry. Oh yes. So during the AM, minimum parking time was 1 minute. The average is 4 minutes, and the maximum was 15 minutes during the AM. But during the PM, minimum still was 1 minute. Average is 12 minutes, and the maximum was 1 hour and 11 minutes. So some of these could be resolved by putting maximum park time on it, but how to control it, as I'm told by the applicant, is this is actually one of the ministry's requirement that have one person on site to be responsible for having children inside and guiding the parents so they can make sure that not necessary parking time would occur on site. And in terms of safety issues, we tested several design scenarios. This one that we proposed is actually the best that doesn't involve tearing the building apart. So it's the same concept as what MTO does in their road construction activities, putting a stop in one direction and allowing the other direction to go ahead. So now in this one, we put a stop on the outbound flow and make the right of way for the inbound, and advise the driver who wants to go out to stop until the driveway is clear. Even if they proceed with our design, there's enough room to have two-way flow at the connection of the access to Wellington Street. So we believe that all safety measures are actually in place, and right-of-way is clear, and sidewalks or connection of pedestrians are maintained. So and there is no issues with stop site distance that we normally check for driveways.
Okay, thanks. And through the chair, just a question to staff. The entry to the...
Push your button, Michelle.
The entry... I'm on now. So the entry to the building is at the side there in the driveway, in that narrow part of the driveway? Just to confirm?
Through the chair, I'll defer to the applicant to clarify.
Okay.
Pedestrian way? Yeah.
Yes, the entrance, I'm saying, is that where the porch is?
I can show.
On the side where the driveway is?
Here. This is the sidewalk that we maintain in our design. So we shifted the existing one to the west, and so why this length is ended and not extended, because it's because of maintaining that minimum width for the sidewalk. So the entrance is here.
Okay. Through the chair then, when you're looking at the parking spots, if all parking spots are taken, and then I've got a couple of cars in the back end waiting to get out, and I've got a couple cars coming in, and then I've got parents with kids making their way to the entry in that narrow part of the driveway, has there been consideration in terms of how you're going to manage the mayhem?
Through Mr. Chair. Absolutely. Based on, if I'm allowed to pass this.
Sure, yeah. You certainly put it up if it's going to help enlighten us. So I think the question is it's really a question of safety and managing the security of kids when the cars are parked at the back and the entry point is halfway down the building on the driveway, potentially.
Through Mr. Chair, sure, I will respond that, but in terms of the question regarding the congestion and what if the all spots are occupied, please consider the GFA of this use, and what we normally do is we calculate the tube generation based on the GFA, and so there are two ways to resolve this. First is, two ways in normal conditions for development applications. First is to use IT tube generation manuals or parking generation manual, which is based on the huge number of surveys conducted through years in the US and Canada. And the other one is doing the proxy site survey. So the concept of both are the same. And what we did in our report is actually comparing these two, the survey that we did and the IT tube generation. And they both are very close in our table. I can refer you to the access review that we did. So IT 10th edition estimates 21 inbound and outbound trips during 1 hour, AM peak hour. What we estimated was 22, one more. And during the PM peak hour, IT manual estimates 21, and what we estimate was 18. So they're in range, and it's as a validation of our work. So those diagrams that I handed over was the minute by minute occupied spaces, number of spaces, and for adjusted based on the GFA for this site. So as you can see, the maximum number of inbound and outbound trip that can happen during the same time is 4. So based on this design, and we have a drawing that shows how many cars can get in and get out with this design, which is around 6 or even more. I don't have that drawing specifically. That shows 6 or even 8 cars that waiting and entering the site. So this is the worst case. one car is on the driveway and one exit, and the other one is entering. The other one is in the queue to exit, and the other one is going to park. So as you can see, as I said, this is the best. This is not perfect. This is not 100% like a Walmart driveway, but it satisfies the maximum ratio that we expect and provided in those diagrams. So we believe that this design works in considering the amount of the trip that this development would generate. And yeah, in terms of safety, as I said, sidewalk connection is maintained, right-of-way is clear and signed, and additional signages are provided for pickup drop-off. And in the new site plan that is not shown, there is another handicap space that could serve any driver. So I'm not sure if I could address that.
You can go ahead.
I don't want to take up much more time of the committee.
We are here as long as we need to be, so.
That's very appreciated, and thank you. But through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to respond to some of the concerns that you raised that have come up. And I just spoke with our clients, and I asked them if I'm able to reveal some of the policies that they are working on with the ministry with respect to transportation and traffic, and I'd like to share them with you so that you have an indication of what the ministry is requiring them of committing to, and it becomes a policy of the daycare, and they have to adhere to it. So I'm just gonna read.
I'm gonna just.
Okay.
I need to get something clarified.
Okay.
Before we go any further, because one of the questions that was asked and the response that I heard was, is this being operated as a Montessori? In which case, the question then becomes, is it a school or is it a daycare? Because if it is a school, I'm going to refer to staff and ask if that use is a permitted use on the property. Just before we go any further, because I'm not trying to split hairs, but I would like some clarity on if it's a Montessori school and a daycare, or if it's a Montessori school, then it's a school. If it's strictly a daycare, I want to be clear on that. So I'll just ask staff, can you, if you need some time to verify that, in the permitted uses, is a school permitted?
Through the chair, do you mind giving me a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to be very, very clear. Or does Montessori in the zoning bylaw fall into a different category? In other words, when you're defining school, is a Montessori mentioned within that definition?
I have the bylaw with me, but I will wait.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate it.
Through the chair, in looking at, I'm not certain what the Montessori would be classified as. In looking at another site where Montessori is within the town, 330 Industrial Parkway North, there is a site-specific bylaw that speaks to the following uses being permitted: commercial school, private school. That's what one of the Montessoris would presumably fall under. And in that aspect, the current zoning PDS 4 does not permit any of those schools. In the promenade section, it would fall under the permitted uses where it speaks to 11 or uses, institutional uses permitted under 11.1 of the bylaw, in which case it does not get checked off. Having said that, this application is just for the parking reduction. It doesn't speak to a daycare or a Montessori, so I believe that may be negligible, because the applicant still has the right to pursue a daycare, and if the applicant is successful in receiving this reduction in parking, they can come back and request that a variance or go through the zoning to permit a private school.
Okay, so what?
My comment, Mr. Chair, through you, is that I'm in support of Matthew's response to that. I do have the bylaw here that says private schools are permitted, and
Permitted within
bylaw 6000-17
on this site.
on the site. And since the applicants are going through the process with the municipality, should this Montessori issue become an issue beyond the bylaw requirement, then it's something that we'll discuss and confirm with you. But we want to work with you. We do not want to come back here a fourth time. And
I appreciate that.
And we do not want to go to the outpat. So if this is an issue, then we're going to work with you to deal with it, and it will be resolved.
I see staff here want to add to this, so go ahead,
Sure.
Matthew.
Through the chair, just to clarify with the agent, the private school is not a permitted use under the PDS 4 designation. The school in the zoning bylaw, you'll see it defined as school, private. That isn't included under the PDS 4 in the promenade section of the zoning bylaw. And in this case, it would fall under the permitted use. It would fall under the permitted use column of institutional uses as permitted in section 11.1 of this bylaw, but for the PDS 4, that is actually not checked off either. So in essence, a private school would not be permitted on this property in the absence of a zoning bylaw, or if it was deemed that a minor variance to permit the use would be acceptable.
And further to Matthew's comments, in the PDS 4 zone, daycare uses are permitted. So this is something that we can, because our applicants are in the initial stages of obtaining a license, we can work with that. They have expertise in Montessori, and I wanted to raise that. But it's not, I'm not changing.
I'll just say, so if you couldn't pursue it on the basis of a Montessori school, would that have enough of an implication to your client to reconsider?
Reconsider changing it to a daycare use? Either
changing it, or I can't see us moving any further other than to give you daycare. Because because under
yes,
what we've just heard from staff, we couldn't approve a Montessori. So if the intent of your client is for the sole and expressed interest of pursuing Montessori, and you couldn't do that on the site without obtaining either a variance, if that was determined to be what was needed, or a zoning amendment, would your client want to continue to pursue this application?
May I take a moment to
You
just ask them
certainly may.
since they're here?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, by all means. Doesn't matter. Yeah, doesn't matter. But you raised something. Where the entrance is, you gotta get kids from the front to the back. And there's no sidewalk. Yeah, well,
And then what happens if the parking's taken? All the teachers have to be there.
yes, thank you. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Sorry about
We
that.
decided to have a little sidebar ourselves.
No, it's okay. That's how it's going this evening.
Yeah.
And that's all good. I did briefly speak with our clients, and they are confirming in accordance with the applications that have started back in the fall of 2008 that they are proceeding with a daycare, and I'm confirming that. One of the partners has experience in Montessori, but that's her experience, but she also has experience in daycare uses. So I'm clarifying that for you, and I'm putting it on the record.
I just wouldn't want us
I
to
appreciate
approve
that. I
something
appreciate that.
and then have your
Yeah.
client go, oh my goodness.
No, and I
we can't do
appreciate
really
that.
what we want,
And thank
which
you
is
for
a school.
Thank you for bringing it up.
So, yeah, okay.
So I wanted to address one of the, and I'm sorry, without my glasses, I can't see. Michelle, yes. I wanted to just speak to like drop off and pick up. As a mom myself with children, one with special needs, I always have to speak to the teachers, and I schedule that time, and I schedule those times on off times because as a parent, I know it's going to take longer. And so I just want to get the kids in and out, and then I do my talking out of respect for the situation, because all of the daycares are bustling. And even today, I was at the Aurora Montessori school that's just off Church Street, which is just behind, just in front, south of the library and the cultural center, and there's a church, and there's all kinds of parking issues there, and the lot is very tiny. And I saw the parents, they drop off and they pick up, and within seconds. I didn't feel comfortable videotaping them because I thought that was inappropriate, but I was there this morning and I saw that. So to answer your question, it's fairly quick. That's been my experience, and there's always people monitoring. It's especially in today's day and age, over the past, I would say, 10 years with safety concerns. It's very adamant that these things are in place.
No, just press it until it goes
Okay, there
green.
we
I can still hear you though.
Oh, okay, great, thank
Can
you.
you hear me?
Yes,
Absolutely,
no,
yeah.
we need the mics on because
For recording.
if we're recording it, and who knows, there may be some interested citizens watching this, or
I
it may
agree,
be of
yeah.
help that when it comes time to doing the minutes. So yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Through the chair, again, the same concern comes up, whether you have seven staff and potentially 3 part-time, taking some of the spots, all day long because they have to be there. And then you've got 4 left for drop-off and pickup. And in the heavy times, you've got, if there's no parking spots, you've got cars coming in and trying to make their turns. You've got cars going out. You've got more cars coming in. And through the narrowest part of this whole drive, there's no sidewalk. There's nothing protecting you getting out of from the car to that entry.
There is a provision in the ministry's policy that a parent and or staff member has to walk with a child to the entry of the daycare facility. One of the other items that did come up for consideration is that they're part-time parking spots. So this does not entail that they are going to be using them. There is a GO train next door. I did speak with the clients about this. They're more than happy to provide, Presto cards for employees that would be using the spots. So there would be 2 freed up spots there. That's just some additional information that I wanted to provide you to ease your concerns.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
And through the chair, just again, going back to the Montessori,
Yes.
will this be marketed as a Montessori daycare, a Montessori preschool, as part of your marketing literature to attract new clients and so on?
No, it's going to be marketed as a daycare use, which is permitted under the bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
But I do thank Mr. Chair in bringing up that issue to clarify it. So thank you.
No problem. Sorry.
That's okay.
Through the chair, that's all I have.
Thank you. So, here we are. Thank you for making sure that we had your traffic consultant come back. The applicants are here, and Mary, I think you've done a terrific job. Thank you.
Thank you. And I wanted to, sorry to interrupt, but I do need to say this in this venue, that staff at the town of Aurora have been absolutely tremendous in helping me, and I really appreciate the work that you guys have done, and all of the other planners in the department and everyone else in all the other departments. They really have worked collaboratively with us through this process. I just wanted to say that.
And we appreciate that kind of feedback, as I'm sure so do staff. And I've echoed that comment on behalf of the last committee, and I'm sure we'll hear it many times going forward. Couple of things. Number one, you, based on the previous applications that have come forward and some of the comments that were made from previous members, you've, I think, addressed a number of them. I won't say 100%, probably I'll speak on my behalf. 100% of my satisfaction, but I think it's the constraints of the site itself. If the building could, for example, be shifted a little bit further west, you would have had more opportunity to do something about the in and out movements. You would have had more opportunity to provide a separate protected sidewalk from the main entry point of the building back to the parking. I appreciate that you've added some parking, and one of my questions is, and I'm sure that big heavy book that you carry that dictates the Ministry of Education's guidelines, that the play area that you've reduced dramatically outside next to the handicap parking spot is still sufficient and meets the ministry's requirements for the outdoor play area that you're required to provide. I still see the proposed play area between the front of the building and Wellington, which still, in my mind, creates concern. And again, I'm going to assume that that meets the ministry guidelines. Otherwise, I would think you probably would have shown a couple of parking spots there. I'm not sure if that would have been permitted in terms of requirement and setback distances for parking from the front of the building to the right-of-way. But I still have a concern there. You've got traffic, commuter traffic, you've got regular traffic, and your play area there is shown right up against that sidewalk, and I assume there must be some protection there. That still remains a concern for me, has nothing to do with the application. But when you look at all of those things, given the use and the reduction to parking, it does make you have second thoughts. And having said that, I'd like to get a comment from the applicant, if you wish to make one on the basis of the letter that we received or staff received on February the 6th from the neighbor at 81 Wellington and his concern. I don't need a comment on the issue of liability because that's between him and his insurer and what have you to deal with that. If there's concern on his part for liability, that's his issue, and perhaps down the road maybe your issue if something happens that involves one of the parents or one of the children because there was no parking, they parked in his lot. But I would like a comment if you have one, because I think he is basing this on the potential that you don't have enough parking, and he's worried that you're going to park on his property, and whether it's for 5 minutes or an hour or whatever. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
I do. Thank you again, Mr. Chair, for your comments. With respect to, you spoke to the play area in the front. I do want to note that the application was circulated to the various town departments, including the zoning and building department, and they have responded that there was only one variance with respect to the parking that was needed. Should there have been an issue with respect to the front yard as the application was submitted, we would be here this evening with 2 variances, but we're not. We're here for 1 variance, and we have that confirmed in writing by Samantha Sample.
Okay.
With respect to like you mentioned safety concerns, the ministry requires a particular type of fencing to be placed around the property, and it's for safety concerns. And so they don't want to see a wooden fence where we can't see through and see what's going on. So they have very stringent requirements on that, and I've heard them over and over again. And so the applicant is required to provide that fencing, and it will be provided. And it's a ministry requirement. I spoke with Mr. Ray about this, and we are in agreement with it. With respect to the reduction of parking spots, again, I'm repeating myself, but we are here to ask for a variance in reduction of parking spots, not for the use that's permitted on the property. And in terms of the Planning Act, it's my professional opinion that those parking spots meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act. And I feel strongly about that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
No comment on the neighbor's letter?
With respect to the neighbor, you mentioned a good point. Liability not only applies to his property, but it also applies to the daycare property. So it is in they are required to ensure that parking doesn't happen. So it's a liability issue. It's a municipal standard issue. And if it's not dealt with, it needs to be dealt with. I mean, that's standard in various types of situations throughout the town.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think you have answered questions that we have. I'll just canvass the members who came up with their comments and questions first, and anything further to add, because I think I'm okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to follow up because I have had a...
I just got up.
Or Mr. Mayor, sorry, Mr.
I'm
Chair.
not sure if
I've been watching too many council sessions. Yes, it comes with a big pay raise. Through you, Mr. Chair.
I did run for council and I didn't get elected. That's fine.
Apologies, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair. I do just want, for clarity's sake, because I think there was some confusion over the amount of spots that are going to be we'll call it reserved, and which ones won't be, because I know that there was a comment that there would be a requirement for 6 staff spots, and I have looked through the LEA consultation and it says that 5 spots would be sufficient. So I just was looking for clarity on that, and how many we would have reserved and how many we would have open, because I heard that there would be 4 spots that would not have signage. Right.
I'd like to address you to our traffic consultant.
Absolutely.
Because,
thank you.
When you first asked the question, I may have referred to an original staff report in where those numbers have changed.
Yes.
And so that's, and I am, I'm actually pleased that you picked up on that and that you're asking it again. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask our traffic consultant to come up and answer that question for you.
Thank you. Please do.
Yes. Thank you.
Welcome. Mr. Chair. Well, when we use our proxy site survey results, as you can see in our parking study, there will be 9 parking spaces naturally required, 5 for staff, 4 for pickup drop-off. But staff parking is flexible, in specifically in non-residential uses. This is something that can be dictated by the employer. They can say, we only have 4 parking, even 0. For example, not in downtown Toronto, in more suburban area, we have similar cases. For example, 4-story office building with 0 parking for staff. That's got approved. So through this similar TDM measures, or based on being close to regional or other levels of transit routes that are here, and that this site is, in terms of access to transit, is to me it's very good in all levels. We have GO Rail on a 5-minute walk to the east, and Viva Young on Young, and other local buses in front of this site. So this is something that can be dealt with. It can be even reduced to 2. For that would be a condition. This is subject to confirmation with the client, but my professional opinion is that can be reduced as long as it's required. So 4 parking spaces is minimum requirement for pickup drop-off, but it could be extended to 6 or even more.
Okay.
Yeah, and
thank you. So just for
condition of your approval.
Right. So for clarity, in the submission, through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of signage, how many will contain signage and be reserved, and how many will not, and for what purpose? Just so that we're clear on what the proposal is.
I haven't confirmed on that for the new application. We confirmed with the client, with the applicant, for 4 in the previous application, but can I consult with them? So
Absolutely.
if they are okay with 6 pickup drop-off spaces.
Right? Also, just when we're talking about the parking that you're providing, just for clarity, one of them is handicap.
Right.
So I can't imagine that. I mean, that's got to be both. That's got to be either or. You may have someone coming, with that has a child that, you know, requires the use of that space.
Correct.
When they're being dropped off and picked up, or an adult for that matter. Similarly, you may have a staff who may require that space, in which case it then becomes staff parking.
Yep, correct.
Just for clarity.
Okay, sure.
So if you want to consult with your client there,
Yeah,
that's
sure. Okay, thanks.
that's terrific. And while you do that, for the benefit of the members of the committee, we can't really, and I'm going to look to staff again just for reconfirmation on this, we can't really put a condition on the approval conditional to the employer or the applicant requiring staff to use public transit. There is no way that the town of Aurora have the staff or the wherewithal to be able to enforce that. And I'll just get a quick response on that. Maybe Matthew, am I correct? You can't really enforce that, can you?
Through the chair, no.
Okay, thank you. All right, so please go ahead. So again, just for because a lot of the traffic report and their intent is to promote the use of public transit. There is a lot of public transit that goes by that site. There's lots of stops, and you've got the GO train, et cetera, et cetera. Not to say that staff are going to be using the GO train or public transit, but it's certainly something that was included in the traffic study and formed part of the reasoning for supporting the reduction.
Situation is that the operators of the daycare may impose something to this effect.
Sure.
So I don't think that it necessarily has anything to do with the municipality in that regard. However, given the location of the site and its proximity to the GO train and the Viva bus and the GO train bus, which, you know, many of us have used frequently, and they are improving as time goes on with a number of train rides that are available. It only makes it more attractive for to provide employees to come to Aurora. And I did want to also mention, this is a business use that the applicants have chosen out of so many various places throughout the province to come to Aurora to operate their business use and to employ staff. And this is a good thing. And I know that this is maybe a little bit off topic, but I'm very well versed with the business concierge program, and they have assisted me through the process of this application, and they encourage the use. It's a business use coming to the town. This is a good thing.
I couldn't agree more with you, as I'm sure my colleagues at this table couldn't agree more.
Yes.
I think one of the comments that I actually made, and I can't remember which one it was, because we've looked at not only yours, but we've looked at, there was another application that came forward that was much closer to the GO train, and I think it was at that particular application where I actually said the most ideal location for a daycare would be where the train station is. And I mean, what better location could you find right on that site? Because there is definitely a need. And I couldn't agree with you more. And so there's that struggle when you've got a site that's as close to the GO station and public transit that you have. However, You know, it wasn't that many years ago. There was no parking. There was no decked parking at the Go
That's
train.
right, yeah.
And the ridership has gone way up. And as a result of that, all very well and good, the traffic on Wellington, and that is, again, part of the concern that I expressed the last time, is people trying to get onto that property when a train has arrived. The 10 and 15 minutes after that train arrives completely clogs Wellington in both directions. So the implications for you and your potential clientele is going to be, you're going to have to deal with their level of frustration because they can't get in and get out. Not because of the parking, but because of access to and from Wellington. It's got nothing to do with your application. But it's not a question of whether or not this town, I think, can use another daycare. My goodness, you know, it's growing, and it's, you know, young families that are coming, and your client who sees an opportunity and would add to the employment of the community. I couldn't be more supportive.
I have to agree with you, Mr. Chair, 100%. I teach classes with the town of Aurora, and because of the GO train schedule, I have it with me so that I'm not late.
There you go.
And so that's another example to support what you've just said. And so as a parent, or if I was one of the users, I would make sure. And I used to take the GO train to downtown Toronto, but if I had a daycare that was adjacent to the GO train station, and I lived within walking distance, and I am a planner, and that's what we promote, you're absolutely right that I would be getting off my GO train, walking to pick up my child, and walking home. And that is the ideal situation. And given today's millennials, this is what they want to do. This is what they're looking for. They don't want to have a car. They want to use public transit. They want to make things easier for themselves. So, you know, there's a lot of factors to consider here.
No question.
And there are a lot of positive ones.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I understand what the committee is suggesting, but I believe through the ministry's stringent guidelines and having the comments from the municipality that this is a variance that is absolutely minor that can be addressed and that can be approved. And that's my submission to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I did want to mention the Presto card issue that had come before the committee before. And I'm going to also just, I'm going to park it right after I say one more thing. And my concern at one of the previous meetings was the snow removal, and it's still very much a concern. I am going to look to this committee. We have a number of options, and I'll just quickly remind us that we can approve it as is. We can approve it with additional conditions. And I will leave it to the members of the committee to bring any additional conditions forward that it wishes. And as well to, if appropriate, perhaps look at a condition that would include a time limit on this application. So with that, I'll look to the committee for a motion. The wheels are turning.
I'm happy to answer any further questions.
No, I think.
I know it's 9:20 and it's Valentine's Day, by the way. Happy Valentine's Day.
Yes, happy Valentine's Day to the ladies in the room.
And the men.
And the men.
Yes.
Me too. Michelle, do you want to go forward? Do you try and turn it on? Release and let it come up.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to put a temporary approval with a period of 2 years.
And that is your motion?
That is my motion.
Is there a seconder to that motion?
Just a procedural question, if I may, Mr. Chair. I would support that motion, but I would like to make an amendment, if I could, to also place a condition of site control on that motion.
Michelle, Steve would like to amend your motion by adding a condition, and that relates to
Monitoring? Parking monitoring?
well, there would be someone on site outside to monitor the parking. That goes without question. But there would be a minor site plan approval process required after this.
Through the chair, you can impose a condition of minor site plan approval, to which things are items such as
Snow.
Snow, signage, number of parking spots can all be determined through the process. For example, if the committee wants to regulate the number of parking spots allocated to staff and allocated to or reserved for patrons of the proposed daycare, they can do that as well, and that will be tied in with the minor site plan approval. Further, through the minor site plan approval application, it will be circulated to our engineering and transportation, and also the region of York, as it is a regional road, in which they will have comments on the application as well. And that may ease some of the traffic concerns.
So let me go back to Stephen. So your amendment then would do you want to mention specifically those issues of signage, identifying parking for staff and for drop-off, as well as snow? Do you want to include that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly think that limitations on parking for staff and also for snow removal would be a requirement.
Okay, let's look at the amendment. So are you amenable to that?
I am.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve. It would be conditional to all the existing conditions within the staff report. I don't want to eliminate anything there. Subject to 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Subject to minor site plan approval. And we're going to identify those issues related to snow, parking, and signage.
Staff parking.
Staff parking. Okay. So that is the amended motion. We have it seconded. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. We thank you. We hope that within the 2-year period that allows you to get your approval, it is approved. Obviously, we are in save and accept the appeal period, which is there, and you can certainly look at that. But within that 2-year period, that would allow you to get yourself on the site, operating, and then come back to the committee within that 2-year window. So that is where we stand. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I know that the motion has been made. Is there an opportunity ask a question at this point, or?
Not really. I would suggest that if you do have a question, meet with staff.
I'm just concerned about provincial requirements.
If
I am making the comments, but
yeah. So
I don't have concerns with any of the site plan comments that have been indicated. I'm concerned about the licensing process, and the daycare use cannot happen without the license. And there's no guarantee at this point, based on the recommendations,
yeah,
that my client is going to get that license.
Again, I'm sorry. You'll have to. I mean, that's the decision of this committee, and so I mean, I'm happy to have a discussion with you afterwards. But I would suggest that discussion take place with staff. I would suggest that you do take it up with the ministry in terms of what they will or will not accept. If you need to come back, that's well within actually your rights within the 2-year period. You can certainly come back, but I would take it up with staff at this point and see what options you have based on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for hearing us.
Pleasure.
Okay.
Okay, so that deals with the applications for this evening. I'll look to the committee for any new business that you want to bring up, if anyone has anything. And all right, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I move a motion to adjourn this session.
Thank you very much. We are adjourned.